Hey everyone, me Kevin here with an update on the election, COVID, and stimulus. Remember, you could use the Black Friday month coupon code as well. It is the biggest public-facing coupon code I've ever had on this channel for the real estate course, money and stocks course, or the YouTube course. Check those out down below. Let's start with the election. Yesterday, during Joe Biden's press conference, when he said, we need rental relief now, we need mortgage relief now, we need small business stimulus now, and stimulus in general now, not later. Biden also said that he is willing to talk to Trump. Right now, Trump is largely ignoring requests from Biden's transition team. Bob Bauer, a campaign senior advisor for Trump, called Trump's fight against the election results, quote, unsustainable, and quote, not wrong for Biden's team to call it political theater. This is despite Donald Trump doubling down with the investigations into alleged voter fraud and election fraud. This also comes as the Department of Justice under AG Barr is now thoroughly investigating the election, a potential for fraud. Keep in mind, I'm trying to stay as in the middle as possible. This is not because I'm trying to, lean towards one side or whatever. It's solely because I want to provide reports on what's happening. The postal worker, and this is a very important preface for this, the postal worker who signed a sworn affidavit 2 days ago alleging ballot backdating to get late ballots counted, has now potentially withdrawn their sworn affidavit after the Justice Department interviewed the person. However, now there is a video circulating that this worker never actually withdrew or recanted his affidavit. And this really just goes to show how divided this election is. You've got one side that's desperately looking for a smoking gun of evidence, potentially even many smoking guns of evidence that there was election abuse. And then you've got the other side suggesting, nope, we don't have any evidence. It's a complete disaster. There is so much animosity between Republicans and Democrats right now. It is very problematic. What I do want to say, though, is this. A sworn affidavit does not mean much when it's just sworn, written, and notarized, and done. When it actually has a lot of value, in my opinion, is once it gets challenged and then it holds up. So imagine this, you have a Justice Department investigator coming to talk to somebody who wrote down or, issued a sworn statement, and they challenge the person and say, hey, look, you have the right to free speech, but remember, false speech that causes harm is not protected, and you could actually be guilty of a felony via perjury if this sworn affidavit does not end up being true in these public investigations that are going on. This leads a lot of affidavits to end up getting withdrawn solely because people might believe what they said, but they don't want any potential risk of being a potential perjurer. So this is where things get very, very touchy with affidavits. So this could go either way, though, because if somebody says, under penalty of perjury, reiterated in an investigation, hey, yep, I'm good with my affidavit, it can actually embolden an affidavit. Furthermore, Democrats are concerned that they may lose the runoff election in Georgia. There's a lot of talk right now that Republicans are not yet wanting to call Biden as a win for the election because they want Trump to help Republicans campaign in Georgia so Republicans can get control of the Senate. I just want to be very clear about this. Donald Trump has not indicated whatsoever that he is willing to go campaign for somebody else in Georgia, despite this potentially meaning control of the Senate. There's just no indication yet that Donald Trump is going to do that. We'll see. Maybe there'll be tweets. Maybe he'll actually go to Georgia to campaign. We do know that Georgia will have absolutely the most amount of money ever spent on Senate races due to this January 5th Georgia runoff. Either way, massive party infighting is going on now in the Democratic Party. A lot of this started last week, right after the election, intense Democratic calls where Democrats were trading assaults at each other, like Abigail Spanberger saying socialism, defund the police, are phrases that should never be uttered again because they're causing Democrats to lose. She says that Democrats are getting effing torn apart. House Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries says, quote, do we want to win? Do we want to govern? Or do we want to be internet celebrities? This is likely targeted at AOC. And AOC responded to this, saying, well, Democrats lost a lot of seats not because of socialism or defund the police in the House of Representatives, but instead because they did not spend enough money on Facebook ads. Yes, AOC said this. She also said today that it's, quote, astounding that some believe you can't govern, be popular, and command a bully pulpit at the same time. A bully pulpit, by the way, is when you use your voice in a position of power to push for change. Also, today, Politico reports that instead of pulling together, Democrats are now fighting each other across Twitter and Congress even more than they ever have before, consistently blaming each other. And now Democrats are worried that Democrats and the entire Democratic Party will always be labeled as socialist and lead to losses. This is leading Kevin McCarthy, the leading Republican in the House, to say the best thing for the Republican Party is just to let Nancy Pelosi and AOC keep talking. Because apparently Kevin McCarthy believes this really upsets voters, and they may choose to vote Republican instead of Democratic. On stimulus, Nancy Pelosi is receiving heavy backlash in her party for failing to reach a stimulus deal prior to the election when we were close. At one point, we were within $300 trillion of a deal until Nancy Pelosi rejected a compromise figure, leading Donald Trump to declare that stimulus discussions were over, only to backtrack that statement as the stock market sold off. However, despite Pelosi receiving this backlash, she still reiterates that there is, quote, no reason to back down on her demand that we will pass a new HEROES Act for $2.3 to $2.4 trillion. Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, agrees. Nancy Pelosi holding out for this package could mean we wait until late January for relief, which could be dangerous given the U.S. budget fiscal cliff, which is often being considered a potential partner with stimulus negotiations. That negotiation comes up on December 11th and right before. And also to provide relief for the following fiscal cliffs that happen on December 31st, unemployment for self-employed, rental protections, student loan deferrals, Main Street loans, and corporate and municipal credit facilities at the Fed. Fortunately, the question about stimulus, though, does appear to be a question of when and not if. Right now, all eyes are on the legislative working session between November 30th, right after Thanksgiving, and December 18th, right before Christmas. This is when Congress has the opportunity to prevent us from falling off these fiscal cliffs. Mitch McConnell and Biden are both pro-stimulus, but McConnell stated, quote, we need to think about the size if we're going to come up with a bipartisan package. What size is appropriate? It seems to me that the snag that hung us up for months is still there. I don't think the current situation demands a multi-trillion-dollar package. So I think it would be highly targeted, very similar to what we put on the floor in October and September. Now, in case you don't remember what was put on the floor in October and September, here it is. It was a skinny proposal that would have cost around $300 billion and would have reallocated certain funding from the CARES Act. It would have provided $300 per week in unemployment pay through December 27th, which is kind of laughable right now, given that this is unlikely to pass by December 27th. It also included $105 billion for schools, divided in part to 67% to elementary and secondary schools, but they would only receive the money if they actually reopened, or they'd only receive all of the money if they reopened. We had liability protections for schools, businesses, and healthcare, although there's a lot of issues with the liability protections. New PPP funding, along with new inclusions for what the money could be spent on. The Postal Service, $10 billion. $31 billion to the Public Health and Emergency Fund, and $16 billion to COVID-19 relief, along with some money for fisheries, $20 billion for the USDA, and agricultural and rare earth mining. Now, this is really, this is the skinny bill. And if we look at this, we can kind of get a feeling for, okay, this is really the bare minimum we expect to get done. But remember, Nancy Pelosi says, no, it's all or nothing. Dr. Scott Gottlieb chimed in on stimulus today, saying Congress needs to provide economic support to help people who will be hardest hit by the current epidemic wave, including small businesses. He says 2021 will be a better year. Our technological counterattack will prevail with vaccines. But we need to work together to get through this hard winter stretch. Khanna, the person who introduced the Emergency Money for the People's Act with $2,000 per month of stimulus pay, along with Democratic Representative Tim Ryan, stated today, let's get COVID relief done. How many more Americans need to lose their homes, lose their jobs, or lose their businesses to get leadership to sit down and make this happen? This is a slam against Nancy Pelosi. Khanna was also an advocate of just taking the bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus proposal of about $1.5 to $1.9 trillion a couple months ago. Khanna stated that it's going to be catastrophic if we don't. Unfortunately, in this world, Congress seems to need catastrophe to actually get something done. On a vaccine, initial reports were that Pfizer could seek an emergency use approval for their vaccine within 15 days, which would have been about December 10th. This has now been updated to by the end of the month. This also comes as the CEO of Pfizer apparently sold $5.6 million worth of stocks that he sold on Monday, which came after the news of the vaccine. Russia's Sputnik V vaccine now also says that their vaccine is 92% effective. Pfizer's vaccine is being labeled as, quote, more than 90% effective. However, the timing of Russia's announcement leads many to believe that Russia is just trying to suggest that their vaccine is slightly better than the United States is. Moderna expects to release their substantial results on their vaccine next week. This is going to be huge because if having multiple vaccines would double or potentially triple our ability to get vaccines out fast. On COVID, we are at 139,855 cases, up 69% over 14 days, with deaths up to 1,448, up over 23% over the last 14-day average. For those of you that voted on the Twitter poll that I had, anybody who said we're going to see more than 120,000 cases by Thanksgiving is now clearly right. In fact, at this rate, we might blow past my expectation of hitting 150,000 cases in November. We might honestly hit 200,000 cases a day soon, which we know really only represents around 1/4 of the infections that are currently diagnosed. This means we're really likely seeing around 500 to 600,000 cases of COVID per day. On lockdowns, bars, restaurants, and gyms will now close in New York at 10 p.m. as we start seeing restrictions tighten in the United States. Italy's second round of shutdowns are starting again, with 1/3 of the country on partial lockdown and the entire nation experiencing a 10 p.m. curfew. Spain is requiring PCR tests 72 hours prior to travelers arriving in the country. So you can't even travel into the country unless you had a test 3 days prior. The CDC also now says that masks protect you and not just others. The CDC says that multi-layer cloths can block up to 50 to 70% of virus-containing droplets that we may breathe. This is way higher than the 30% effectiveness for cloth masks that Dr. Scott Gottlieb suggested just a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Gottlieb instead recommended that we wear level 3 surgical masks or N95 respirators without exhale valves, which are great at protecting ourselves, closer to 60 to 90% effective. Another Trump ally who was present on election night in the White House has contracted COVID. Healy Baumgartner was the former campaign aide and private advisor to Trump. This also comes as Brian Jack, just minutes ago, was announced to have COVID. He is the White House political director. And again, this was reported just minutes ago. On jobs, joblessness during COVID has been severely linked to education, with those without a high school degree losing jobs around 28% of the time, and those with a bachelor's degree or higher losing jobs only 7% of the time. Now make sure to use that coupon code down below. Get 3 free stocks with Webull if you deposit $100, and of course get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. Check out those links down below, and we'll see you next time.